we do have that one line, that first time where we have any moment in the film about maybe that there's a higher power, maybe, because we see Clara look up and say, if anybody's listening, I could really use some help here.
Hi, my name is Matthew Perkovich from Matt's Movie Reviews, and you're listening to All Over the Place, where the fun sanity never ends.
Hello and welcome back to All Over the Place. I am your host, Eric Porvazic, and right away I'm going to bring in my co-host, Jim. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, we are riding off some great, so much awesomeness happening right now on All Over the Place. And I once again want to thank our longtime friends over at Vinyl Record Dude and Danny Zalesko Presents. Make sure you're checking out them at vinylrecorddude.com and dzpresents.com/events. And also welcoming in our newest friends here on All Over the Place, Harkins Theaters here in Arizona and beyond with Harkins. So make sure you go see your movies at Harkins when you're in Arizona and beyond. Check your local listings. Great to have everybody on board. So make sure you check all of our friends out at their various spots. And thanks to Jim, we have a new friend we're going to be bringing to the show. And this man's a filmmaker, and he's also done some television shows, some syndicated shows. And I want to welcome to the show fellow former class treasurer and a veteran of the Palace of Auburn Hills out in Michigan. Please welcome Matt Engelbert, director of What Tomorrow Brings, to All Over the Place. Matt, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you. I didn't know that we were fellow class treasurers. That's
I learned that when reading. Oh, well, yeah, you went on to bigger and better things. I was just class treasurer my senior year of high school, so I couldn't go on to become president at that stage. So you rode that wave. I love that. And see, I was the class treasurer who never knew how much money we had in the account. So that's a failing on my part. Sorry, Sylvania Northview.
I think you missed your calling. You could have had a future in Congress.
Potentially. I can at least get the Northview vote, maybe. Well, Matt, like I said, the writer and director of What Tomorrow Brings, which is an amazing family affair. I mean, he's got two of his daughters starring in it, and his son did the sound and also the soundtrack. And his other two daughters were involved hair and makeup, and also one was his assistant. Also had a little tiny part in the movie. His wife was unofficial caterer the official caterer for the Thanksgiving scene, and also had an off-screen speaking role as well. And Matt, what was it like for you bringing together the family to make this movie?
As I often say, I'm not going to brag about many of the things my kids do, but when it comes to music or it comes to acting, they're really good. They're really good. So I would never have undertaken this process if I didn't think, number one, that Jolie, as you mentioned, could handle the role that she was given, and also Phoebe the role that she was given, because if the movie comes down to the acting. I think the script is solid, but the movie comes down to the acting. But having done two television shows, which you mentioned, Ariel and Zoe and Eli 2, which ran for 7 seasons, and then during the 3rd season, a second show came on with Jim Peterik, the wonderful man who wrote Eye of the Tiger, and that show also ran 4 years simultaneously. We were filming 2 shows, so me and the older 3 for all that time. So I'm used to working with them, and they're used to working with me, which might be more difficult. But when you mentioned, so working with the family on this, it was able to work because I don't think I could have done it any other way. You know, financially, it would have been very challenging. I mean, to find the talent, to have the access to the talent, allowed it to really work, and we happened to get along, so it was good.
It's always good to have a good working relationship with the director / dad. But and you mentioned, any potential, I don't want to say problems, but was there ever any kind of like dad moments on screen where they just felt like that you're asking them to go in a direction that they maybe didn't want to go?
Okay, so it's a great question. So first of all, with Phoebe and JoJo, or Jolie, she always be called Jolie now. Now that she's over 18, she's Jolie, no longer JoJo. So I know how talented they are as actors. And again, for people who aren't familiar with the movie, it's a very, very heavy subject matter. So I knew I was going to have to be very kind and very gentle with how we handled the filming and the storyline. Because honestly, for 6 months following shooting, I think it took that long for Jolie to recover emotionally from this role. So they're pros. They were up for the biggest roles in film, television, Broadway for 2 years, in and out of COVID and the writer's strike and the actor's strike. I had full confidence with what they were going to be doing. Never had an issue on set with them whatsoever. Eli was interesting because he was handling the sound, and so two early I don't want to say conflicts because Eli is the easiest kid in the world. I can be I'll keep it. I can be challenging. And so early on, Eli thought I was going to be utilizing more expensive cameras, more professional cameras. And I was excited about the new iPhone having come out and being able to shoot and log. And I thought, well, that's what I was going to go with. And he was totally opposed to that. But I said, let's shoot a first scene, and then you'll tell me. So during that first scene, Eli's also in charge of the sound, and we were using actually a single boom. Eli was doing all this work, and in the middle of the scene, I said, "Cut." I said, "Okay, I want to try this a slightly different way, different angles." And Eli said, "No, we're not doing it that way, Dad." He goes, "Every take has to be all the way through. I'm not cutting the audio. It's already challenging enough for me." And so those two things were really a challenge, and to so with we took that first scene we shot, which did you both get a chance to watch? I don't know if you got a chance to watch.
Yes, yes, didn't we?
The very first scene we shot was when it was that scene where the older sister, it's on the birthday, and she gives the younger sister that gift, the stuffed animal, Peaches. And so anyways, we take that shot, and we take it and we put it into Premiere downstairs. Eli has a nice studio in his condo. And it was amazing. We loved it. We loved the way the footage looked. So he was spot on. So he was okay with me using 3 iPhones, 15 Pro Max, using a B-script anamorphic lens, which are like $170 each. But then the thing about the audio was really interesting, because at first I was frustrated with Eli that he said that he wanted to do it that way. And then I realized, you know what? The actors have to act. It just allowed for the actors just to go continuously through an entire scene. And many of these scenes they're not short scenes. So it allowed the actors the freedom to fully immerse themselves in the scene. And then ultimately we'd get a great take, so there was no issues. They knew their roles, they knew the lines, they knew the scene. And so every one of those scenes that you saw was one take. And it was the best take. And after we get the best take, I'd say, let's try it one more time, just in case Eli had any issues with the microphones, which you might have found some issues with sound, but with what we did, that's what we came up with. So really there really weren't any conflicts. Phoebe and Jolie are pros, and they were incredible to work with. And and my wife was really great to work with.
Saying the right things, or I like it. But the truth's the truth. And of course, Jolie at the Santa Fe Film Festival, she got a Best Actress award for that. What was that like for you as a director, and then also as a father, for her to win that award?
That was confirming. It was confirming. I know. Again, I really believe Jolie's a great actress. She was always up for those types of roles, very dark roles. And I was surprised because we saw a lot of great performances over that week. And somebody from the festival had asked me Jolie's middle name one day, and I thought it was an odd question. And then in the back of my mind, I thought, well, maybe they have. I knew they had an award, so I thought maybe she was nominated. So I didn't say anything to Jolie. And on the page, you'll see so every time the MC was mentioning a different award, I would just secretly start pressing record on my phone, just in case. I didn't want to miss it, right? And it happened. And I know it made Jolie very happy for about 24 hours, and then she went back to what she usually does. So, but I loved it. I thought that was very exciting.
And what was that like for Phoebe, her little sister, her acting partner?
She was.
What was it like for her to see her sister win that award?
Yeah, I was joking when I said she was pissed. She was very happy for Jolie. It's funny when you mentioned about Phoebe. I explained to Phoebe. I said the only way this movie works, the only way it works, is if the audience falls in love with you, with your character, with Ruby. So
Right.
no pressure, but it won't work without you being that way. Unfortunately, Phoebe she doesn't overact. She, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes with younger people, they'll want to be cutesy or whatever it might be. And no, you have to be genuine, and you have to be the character, and you have to play that role. And I thought she did a really great job. So she was so happy for her older sister. She knew that Jolie had a lot of heavier lifting in that film.
Yeah, I definitely got the impression there was some really good naturalistic acting. And obviously being a dark story, there was probably temptation to kind of play it big, have a lot of big emotions. But I really felt like the acting was very understated, and I think that was a good choice, because dealing with such heavy issues, it's difficult for that to come through if it's overplayed. But I think it comes through better if it's more subtly done.
Yeah, less and less and less, and they had learned that with their acting for film versus for stage, where with film it's so much less, and you can still capture with your eyes and with your other expressions and just being genuine in that moment.
And what is the relationship like in real life? Because I'm the oldest of three boys, and just the sibling rivalry and all that. But you really get the impression that Jolie is looking out for her little sister in this movie, and it's a very heavy subject matter, and it goes right back with Phoebe to Jolie, and just like you can just see the sisters who love being with each other. And I mean, so how much of that was acting, and how much of it was just natural?
That's pretty natural. So Ariel and Zoe are twins. They're 27 years old. Eli's almost 25, or he is 25. I'm losing track. So Phoebe and Jolie are younger, and they've spent more time together. And so when I was writing some of these scenes, I already know how they interact. I've seen Jolie putting Phoebe to bed, right? I've seen her giving, being in the bath when Phoebe's in the bathtub, where she's in the room and they're talking and they're singing together. I've seen them be sad together, and I've seen them be very happy together. So some of those scenes almost wrote themselves in that way. So they don't have any kind of a rivalry. They're never up for similar roles because of their age group, and they both want each other to do well on whatever they're doing. So there isn't any sibling rivalry with those two, or actually, fortunately, with any of the kids, there's never been a sibling rivalry.
Well, there's only one boy in the family, so he can't be picking on the girls. So yeah, I think that wouldn't go over well with Dad. That scene specifically, the one where that you can just see the joy going back and forth with them, and with the bubbles and all that. So that was a great scene. Very, very well done.
Yeah, that particular scene. What I think is so interesting, though, when Eli was tasked with doing the soundtrack for the film, right? And if you notice, even those moments where it seems like it's sort of happy, the music is unrelenting. And what I told Eli is that with the music, that's in Clara's head. That's Clara's mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, what's so challenging. We realize something's just not right, because we all know, and you've seen the film, so I won't give away a spoiler, but we know she's living with something. And I also thought the experiences she has after the mom leaves might be enough that any young person would falter greatly. of course, not knowing what she's living with.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There's a theme there that I think that comes through about a kid having to grow up way too fast, and unfortunately, life's like that sometimes. I'm a foster parent, and I've seen that firsthand. It's a very unfortunate but very real thing that some kids go through. But I think that it's very well depicted in the movie. So just out of curiosity, what kind of inspired the idea for the movie in your mind? Was there personal experiences you drew from, or was it just kind of something new?
Yeah, I had a personal experience with a couple dear friends, and that had beautiful kids. And
Mhm.
what was amazing about that was there was such a structure beyond mom and dad of family and friends who in no way would let those kids falter or fall through the cracks or let anything bad or more bad happen to them. And I was always haunted from that is what would happen if there wasn't anybody? The
Right.
dad passes away from cancer, and then the mom leaves, and there's no one. There's no one. There's no one. So that's why I brought in the character of the attorney. Uh,
Mhm.
She asks those questions. Are there any grandparents, aunts, uncles? And at that
Right.
point, of course, Clara isn't honest with. Well, she's honest about the fact that there's nobody there, but she's very guarded still as to what she will share beyond that. And by the way, good for you for this world needs good foster
Thank you.
parents, and that concept can be very frightening when there aren't where the system might not be that strong.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Emma, just wondering, were there any kind of influences from other films that you were pulled from? The one that I was reminded of seeing it, watching it was Grave of the Fireflies, which I don't know if you've seen that, but a Japanese animated film about a brother and sister trying to survive on their own after World War II. And very similar theme where it's children trying kind of relying on each other, an older sibling trying to keep his younger sibling going. But it sounds like you haven't seen it, but I'm just wondering if there are any other films that kind of felt like influenced your movie.
Yeah, well, not necessarily for the story, but I guess as to how the story sort of ends. When I went into writing this, I had to have an ending that was positive, where the viewer feels things. We can feel maybe confident that maybe things are going to be okay. So there were two things I drew inspiration from. One was there was a movie called Life is Beautiful, which took place during the Holocaust. It was an Italian film. Benini, he got the Oscar for it, but it was about the father and son in a concentration camp, and the father made the son believe it was a game,
Right.
because he didn't want the son to know the actual horrors he was living in. And at the end, of course, the American tanks come through. There's no spoiler on that because that movie's been out for.
It's been out a while. Yeah, I think we know that the spoiler alerts have been long. The statute of limitations long gone on that one. Yeah.
Spoiler alert to how World War II ended.
There was one other a Netflix series called Made with Margaret Qualley. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I haven't seen that one.
But a young woman through an emotionally abusive relationship, and she escapes it with her daughter, and it's really hard. It's one step forward and 5 steps back, a half step forward and 30 steps back, and you really want her to get a win because she's really trying. And I love the way they developed all the characters, including the ex-husband. All the characters, we realize that they're flawed, but the way it was written was really quite strong. In the end, without giving anything away, there is a sense of optimism, and I sort of like that. And as I was writing this and having Phoebe and Jolie involved in the script writing process with their scenes, and of course Jolie's in every scene. but I couldn't have anything more bad happen to Clara. It was enough. At a certain point, it was enough. And Eli wanted it to have more of an A24 type of
mid-20s. He's getting too artsy right now. Yeah, it happens.
How dour can we make this story? Can we keep piling it on, please? There can be no light at the end of the tunnel.
He would have been happy if they remained in the tent.
He can go off. He can film his own little mini-series offshoot of this now.
Right. Yeah. It was all in their minds. We were still in the tent.
Once again, want to thank Matt Engelbert for being here with us on All Over the Place. And be sure you check out not only Harkins Theaters, but Vinyl Record Dude and DZ Presents, DanielZalescoPresents.com/events. And Matt, what I really like about this movie is it is a film of faith, but not in the traditional faith-based sense, because it's just I don't want to make it seem like a spoiler, or I don't want to spoil too much about it, but the wrap-up gets you and it finally announces it. But what I liked about it was it's a faith-based film that does not bludgeon you with it, as things have done over the years. And it comes through, and you, when it's finally announced, or it becomes more apparent that it is a faith-based film, you click back and you're like, it was Clara, or Jolie's character's resilience throughout the movie that pointed you towards the faith of moving forward.
That's what's so interesting. I think I love the fact that you say, I don't bludgeon anybody over the head with the fact that this becomes a faith-based film. But the only way I could have the movie resolve was with faith, and it's something that's really interesting. There's only in the first two acts, right? You can think of it as a 3-act type of a movie. When Ruby gets sick, we do have that one line, that first time where we have any moment in the film about maybe that there's a higher power, maybe, because we see Clara look up and say, if anybody's listening, I could really use some help here. And that line, at first, when I wrote it, it was, I didn't realize the significance it would have for if a viewer actually looks back at that moment as to what happens at the darkest moment, right? Because it seems like nobody was listening, right? It was going from bad to worse, and to the point where it's just desperation. And then at that darkest, most awful moment, that's when that prayer was sort of answered. Whether it was a prayer, like you said, you're not bludgeoned. She didn't even mention God at that moment, right? The ones who mention God are the attorney and her husband,
right,
who obviously are people of great faith.
Subtlety works so much better. Loved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one other thing is interesting. I didn't know how people would react to that, right? If for me, I just couldn't have the movie end the way with anything more bad happening to Clara. I'm a dad, and I look at these two young girls, and it hurt. In fact, one thing that was interesting, I rewrote the way I first wrote. Well, I won't give too much away, but there was one scene I rewrote because when I was writing it, it hurt. It just hurt me. I couldn't, and so there's gonna be no more pain for Clara after a certain point, right? And I've known people like the attorney and her husband in the film, who are people of great faith, and they're beautiful, loving people, and I could see them doing what they do. My wife, when she first read the script, she said, I just don't see that. I just don't see them doing this, right? What people would actually do this. And I looked at my wife and I said, well, we would. We almost did. right?
Yeah.
But it hit me that I had to develop the husband's character a bit more. So those scenes toward the end with the husband weren't really there at first, and so I had to build that up to a bit. So the audience might say, "Oh, okay, I understand how he can relate to these two children. I can understand why he could develop such a quick connection."
Jolie and Phoebe both have writing credits on the movie, and I'm wondering, how much of that was scripted, them coming in, developing things through scripting, and how much of that maybe lent itself to some good improvisational work during the course of the movie? What was the balance like between scripted and improv?
So I think the great thing about them being involved in the writing process was there was no need for anything improvisational. It was some of this was, well, I'll tell you one scene in particular. Again, though, this will I don't want to give away, but where Ruby shares that she had a bad dream.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't give anything. That Phoebe one morning actually came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I had a bad dream last night." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And she told me that exact dream. And I said, "Well," I said, "Honey," I said, it's a bad dream." I said, "We're using that in the movie, but we're putting Clara's name into it. I'm not driving in this. I don't know. Is this?" So it actually became, and I loved it. I said, "Oh my, this is perfect." And it was verbatim from the way she told me her dream. So I think by them being involved in the writing process, they became so connected to the script. And so, as you know, memorization is one part of it. And that's memorization alone doesn't help you as an actor. I mean, it helps you to know the lines, obviously, but for delivery and to have that style of being able to communicate with the other person, you have to have so much more than memorization. So I really wanted because of the way we were filming it, I was really hoping people would stay close to the script as I wrote it, and as Phoebe and Jolie had taken part in writing their lines. I didn't really want to. So every other scene was almost as I had actually written them. I think the young woman who plays the attorney, she took a couple of liberties and changing locations of where she might have met her husband and things like that. But that was totally fine, and that was totally within her choice.
And another thing that I really liked about this, and in reading about your story with this over at Christian Toto's site, was just it reminded me of Robert Rodriguez when he was making his early movies, and Rebel Without a Crew that came up that's in my head as I'm watching it, and having made some movies, just very guerrilla style. Shooting it. So what was it like for you coming from that background with the Ariel and Zoe and Eli too and Steal the Show from a television standpoint? Talk to us about the difference between that and making that transition to making a movie where you're hitting the ground running. You're going to location here, location there.
Yeah, making the movie was so much more difficult. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done. And this was because I did take it upon myself to find locations. And thankfully, I have some wonderful people in the community. And by the way, I would say that to filmmakers, be kind to people. You never know who's going to be. I mean, I'm kind not hoping that they're going to do something in return to me ever. The restaurant scene. Well, there's two restaurants that we used in the film. Both those restaurants, I've been a customer there for many years. I mean, I love their food. I love the people there. And early on, I said, by the way, I'm making a movie. I might need to borrow a space here. Is that possible that I could ever get in? And both owners of both places said, you tell me the day. We'll tell you the days that we're not open, and you can just have those days. We're not open. I mean, they supplied the staff. They supplied food. They were so incredibly generous. So those things made things a little bit easier. But if I didn't have the control over, Phoebe and Jolie living in the house, and Eli and Ariel and Zoe being a couple miles away, I think to be able to have actually accomplished it would have been so remarkably challenging, even more challenging. Weather didn't always cooperate. I had to rewrite one scene because I thought for certain there was going to be snow on the ground. It's the middle of winter in Michigan, and there was no snow. There's no snow on the ground, so I had to create a different scene that took place indoors, which maybe worked better. One scene that, by the way, there was one big snowfall in Michigan that winter, and so there is that scene in the snow, which is a very it's not a very nice, it's sort of an unhappy scene, and I was looking at the weather reports, and it was going to warm up the next day. I mean, that snow was going to go away, and maybe we wouldn't have snow. So I told Phoebe and Jolie, I said, get your boots, get your jacket. The three of us are going out. I didn't have anybody else to reach out to, and all of those scenes, from them walking to the van, to them walking through the snow, it was just me, Phoebe, and Jolie, the two lanterns, and whatever light sources I had from outside, and the one camera, me holding the one camera. It was cold out, and that's how we captured those scenes. And so, yeah, it was guerrilla style, right? The scenes outside the school, I would wait till school was out, nobody's around. Okay, set up.
Go. Oh, I remember those days. Yep. Wherever you can get it in, and it was just very German expressionist, having the very heavy dark scene with the snow. I like that.
Yeah, it felt very dreamlike to me. So that actually leads me to my next question. Did you have to build any sets, or did you use all existing locations?
Oh man, I love that question. So the house where they lived initially is Ariel, Zoe, and Eli's condo, right?
Okay.
The house where they ended up is my former house. I know, before I moved to Florida. So there's that one really, I think a very beautiful scene which is indoors. I don't want to give it away too much, but is that one, I think, a very beautiful indoor scene, which I think is the most beautiful scene of the movie. Again, without giving away too much, but I didn't want that meal to take place around a table. I didn't know how a table would work for that. We without giving it away, the scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where yeah. And so I borrowed that room. Didn't look anything like that, and I bought so much stuff off Amazon, really, and borrowed trees from neighbors, and spent like 3 days making that set for that scene to look the way it did. Otherwise, not really. I mean, I'd light it. I had a main light that I used, that I live by, and tried to use, where possible, natural light. But yeah, again, in terms of being able to set up and break down, things were pretty quick, and I hope it doesn't seem like it was done cheaply. But it really was. Things were set up quickly and taken down quickly.
I love it. It played in so well with the story. Just mom leaves, and you're just two girls fending for themselves, and it just, the sets just, it was natural. It did nothing felt artificial. No, I loved it.
Oh, I'll tell you a scene. I'll tell you what. Actually, something really sort of funny. I had no idea how to film what a hospital scene would look like. So there's hospital rooms and there's hospital rooms. But I looked up, what does like a psychiatric room look like? Not the ones where I'm holding my arms like this, where you're wrapped up and there's rubber walls. Not that, but where people are taken for observation. And I looked it up, and I'm thinking, well, where would I find this? And then I thought, my buddy has an office, and the way the walls looked, and the way the window was situated, I'm looking at the pictures of a children's psychiatric ward, and I'm looking at his office, and I said, oh man, that's perfect. That's I don't think he loved the fact that I thought his office looked like a children's psychiatric ward, but I think, again, how people perceive a scene, right? They have no idea what the room actually looks like beyond the cameras, and I think that's something else that's really fascinating. And I look at so many films, especially lower budget films, and I think, you know what, guys, you could do better. You can. You don't have to settle for something that might look out of place. There's so many options. Use your imagination. You really can find what you need. You don't need a hospital room. She's not being hooked up to machinery, right? So I think sometimes people think, oh, I need a hospital room, so I'll try and find a hospital room. Or, I think there are ways of finding what you need, right? So if you need a school, look up what are the local regulations for how you can film in a city. And a lot of times you don't need a permit as long as it's certain times of the day, as long as you're not showing other people, as long as you're not blocking sidewalks. There are ways to really shoot in cool places, but it can be challenging for sound. So sound was really challenging with some of the outdoor scenes. And that's something that, that's life. And I wasn't gonna record over any voices, because you can't, when it's a film that's a drama and it's all about the acting. You try to dub the voice over in certain things. I'll take the sound. I'll take the lesser quality sound over what might sound better, but it won't match the acting perfectly.
The eyes and brains of a seasoned director is first time out, folks. Pay attention. And Matt, I want to see where I've got a couple of different ways we can go right now. And I should have checked with you beforehand, because I wanted to focus on the positivity of this, because I know in the story of Christian's site, he touched on, and you wrote about the adversity that you faced from the festivals because of your Jewish background, it being a Christian-based faith thing. Do we want to get into that now, or do you want to focus mainly on the positivity?
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it had to do with the fact that I'm Jewish, or I do think that Christianity, in a positive light, does not sell among the elites. It doesn't. We know that, and that's a fact. And that's what. Fine. They can have what they want. If they want that, fine. I'm going to build something else. I did it with the TV shows, and I'm trying to do that with making movies now. I'm not going to play by their rules. They can have their rules. I'm sort of done with it. But with Sundance, and I shared this with Christian after I wrote that article. And Christian's a great guy, by the way. I just getting to know him better.
There's a reason he's been a friend going back 10 plus years. And he's been on this show at least once a year. No, he's a great guy. Phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let me find this, because I don't want, because I think people will say, oh, you must be making it up. And of course, I'm not. I'm not. So when it came time, I was so excited to submit. The very first festival I submitted to was Sundance. I don't know why I was so excited. I made a movie. I thought, oh, maybe I'll get into Sundance. Set your sights on a top festival. I was so naive, and it's sort of, as I look back, it sort of bothers me that I was so naive about it, because I think I'm a realist, and I'm not. So I use what most filmmakers will use called Film Freeway. You go to Film Freeway, and that's when you can submit to all the festivals, all of them, right? Every festival you can submit them. And so I hit the feature film button. That's great. And I see the fee, I don't know, $75, great. And then I think I'm just going to hit submit. Before you submit, answer these questions. Mandatory to answer the questions. Now, if you choose not to answer, that is an option. So what do we think these questions are? What is the race of the director? What is the national origin of the director? What is the sexual, or did I already say that? What's the sexual orientation of the director? Is the director transgender? And then there's a couple more. And I looked at it, I said, why am I? So I'm just giving them $75. There's no way. And the top film festivals have these questionnaires. And again, it's fine. it's what it is. You know, for me to go and complain would be sort of stupid because I know what I'm dealing with. And fortunately, I think there's a large number of people who are sort of done with that, and a large number of talented people who are done with that and want to figure out, well, what's another way? How is there another way? And I look at the standpoint from music, right? With Ariel, Zoe, and Eli were always around these big musicians who were part of big record contracts, and now with CD Baby or with DistroKid, you can get your music out there. With social media, which I'm not a big fan of social media, but with social media, you can get your music out there and you can gain a following, and you don't need a label.
Just put it on YouTube.
And I think the same thing can happen here. We just people have to be aware of what's being created. I think that's why Angel Studios is able to do what Angel Studios is doing. But when I made the TV shows, I realized even back then we made shows that were very family friendly. They were not made for New York, and they weren't made for LA. I realized that the middle part of America is vast and it's huge, and that's what I wanted to play to, because that's what I understand, and that's what I want to do with movies. And I don't think you have to have SAG. I mean, I didn't make this movie with SAG. You know, get great people together who love the script, get them together, make it so they share in the profit. If you make a profit in a big way, you know, I'm not greedy. I want to make movies, and but I don't want to take part in any of this crap that we. I didn't watch the Emmys. I won't. But I saw some of the clips of what some of these actors felt so compelled to share with the world about how awful America is. Right? Well, freedom of speech. Unfortunately, they don't want me to have freedom of speech, and they don't want you to have freedom of speech. But they want to have. They can say whatever they want to say.
Well, as a band I saw back at Pine Knob many moons ago, Metallica, it's freedom with their exceptions.
Yeah. We seem to be moving, gradually out of a phase in Hollywood which I think I've never seen this I don't think it's ever been done in Hollywood before, but it was kind of a period where movies were not about ideas, but about identities. You know, these movies come out and you look up the review and you're thinking, what's this movie about? And the reviewer goes, oh, well, it's about the experience of the person with this identity living in 2024 America or whatever. You know, it's not, there's no ideas. And so there's nothing universal for people to kind of grab onto. So these movies kind of, for about 10 years, these movies are coming out and just disappearing into the ether because nobody watched them. And, I'm talking mostly about indie, but we seem to be moving out of that phase. I don't know if it's because the funding is drying up from certain places or the culture has shifted or what. But so I feel like a movie like yours definitely has more options than it would have had 5 years ago. You mentioned Angel Studios. Have you reached out to them at any point about this?
I did try. I early on I did. We didn't get through the rounds, but what I submitted, which were good scenes, but there were some issues in how it was, and I must have been on how I uploaded it, and I couldn't get through to the people to say, hey, can you take it down? Can we put it back up there so that, because there was a lip sync issue, and of course you have a lip sync issue. I don't care how good your movie is, you lose your audience really quick, and so I wish I could redo that. I had some really good feedback from some people on that, and that was a long time ago. But I rushed. I did, and this is a massive learning curve, and I rushed that part of the process and probably shouldn't. But I am hoping that we find a distributor before too long. Here, I mean, it's just the film rep just got it. So, and I think he's hitting the ground running this week. So,
Great.
We'll see.
Well, always a fan of throwing up a little prayer or two here and there and I will definitely add that to my prayer list. And I also wanted to get into, you mentioned a name that means a lot to me as a music fan, and he's actually someone who gave me permission to use one of his first songs, Vehicle by the Ides of March. Jim Peterik and I go back to a documentary I did years ago about 1970s baseball, and he allowed me to use Vehicle as the kind of the unofficial theme song for the movie. And not a lot of people realize that Jim Peterik, his songwriting, he has worked with some very, very heavy hitters through the years. Personal favorite of mine, Sammy Hagar. He's worked with him in 38 Special, and the list goes on and on. You know, Matt brought up Eye of the Tiger when he was with Survivor. But so I'd like to know what it was like. First, how'd you get tapped in with Jim Peterik, and what was it like working with him and having your kids work with such a songwriting legend?
Yeah, this is a great story. So during the third season of Ariel and Zoe and Eli too, we were starting to get traction. I mean, we were in 90% of U.S. households at that point. And during the third season, one of the smaller networks airing the show was I think they were out of Chicago. And the fellow who ran that network was called the Cool TV. I don't know, it's sort of an obscure. They just showed MTV music videos. They had the cat and that they showed that all day long, and they started our television show every weekday right at like 4 p.m. or when kids would get out of school. Anyways, he called me up and he said a friend of ours. We were telling him about the show and how Ariel, Zoe, and Eli have sort of taken on the bullies with this anti-bully, right? We were anti-bully, and he said this friend of his wanted to write a song for Ariel, Zoe, and Eli. And I said, well, sounds great. I said, who is he? He said Jim Peterik, and so I didn't know Jim's name at that time, and so I Googled Jim Peterik, and I'm spelling. I got kidding me. Jim Peterik wants to write a song for Ariel, Zoe, and Eli. So we went out. So he writes the song, and Jim's. It's really funny. Now I was in touch with him directly, and he said he emailed me. He said, "I'm at the Chicken Shack right now, and I've got the idea in my head how I want to write it." And he sends me this idea for this song. And it's just him singing, but he's singing sort of in the key of what Ariel, Zoe, and Eli would be singing. So it's sort of this broken falsetto. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. I'm thinking to myself, the kids won't even get this, but I'm going to play it for Ariel, Zoe, and Eli. And I play it for them. They go, "Oh, Dad, that's cool. That's cool." They're musicians. They get it. They said, "Oh, this." So we went out to Chicago to Jim's house. And Jim has 2 studios in his house. And at the time, Jim was 62 years old. He comes out of his room. He's got purple hair, bright purple hair. He's got his leather clothes on, and instantly jived with the kids. And they had so much fun recording it. And it sounded great. It was a song called "Hey Bully." So it was really cool. And I called Jim like the Monday after. So we filmed with him on a Friday and a Saturday, I think. I called him Monday morning. I said, "Jim, I have a crazy idea." I said, "I have a whole new idea for a TV show. It's about this Grammy-winning songwriter, rock and roll star, and these 3 kids from Detroit. And it's all about the songwriting process. It's about writing and recording songs. And you get to share stories from your journey." And he said, "Let's do it. Let's do it." And we did that we had 3.5 seasons. Every episode was a new song. Either Jim would write it himself, or Ariel, Zoe, or Eli would send him an idea for a song that they'd been working on, and he would take it. And but Jim was just the sweetest, kindest, most decent, generous guy. And I could see him doing that with Vehicle because, he had his publishing, with these other songs he has publishing, but it's shared with other people, other songwriters. Jim is the most generous guy. We had so much fun with him. I keep in touch with him all the time. And I'm hoping to reconnect with him soon with Jolie, actually. He's a fan of Jolie's voice. And of course, Jolie's a fan of his. And the 3 of them, or the 4 of them, actually got a Daytime Emmy nomination, which was sort of unheard of for a small production company like ours. I was told by a vice president at NBC, which had dibs on the showings, and they would air the show. They said, when I asked her about the Emmys, she goes, "Oh, Matt," she goes, it's not no chance. It's just for the big production companies. And let me think, right back here.
Yes, yes, we need to see. This is awesome. Yes.
This
Take
is
that,
Eli's
Right on.
because it's not right there. An outstanding original song, and Ariel, Zoe, and Eli became the youngest ever in that category to get that nomination.
That is awesome. See, that goes back to, and that's why I love about your story. And I'm a guy, it's the Irish in me, the underdog, taking on the big guys and winning. I love that. Going back to your days as treasurer and taking on the big guys, the popular kids, sticking it to them. Yep, I love it. Stick it to demanditis. Is that what the disease was in School of Rock, Jim?
Yep.
I like
You got it.
Yeah. By the way, my Old Navy shirt. I love my Old Navy shirt. So
There you go. Yes, and I got to try. Now, steal the show. How can I see that? Because I love the concept and I love Jim's stuff. So how can I? Is it on YouTube? Anywhere I can check that out?
yeah. So what's really interesting is the film rep has just taken both TV shows as well. So the shows had been on streaming so after they went out of syndication in 2017, there's been a couple of different distributors, and now I've just ended a relationship with the distributor that had it most recently, and so I'm hoping that another distributor will be picking it up soon, and so I'm hoping early in the year it'll be back streaming on whether it's I don't know which streaming service, but hopefully it'll be just available because it had been up until recently again just available on so many of them, whether it was Amazon Prime or Tubi or things like that.
Well, as you can see in the background here, I'm a bit of a music goon, so I'm digging that concept. So
Jim's truly just one of the greatest people I've ever met, and his relationship with Ariel, Zoe, and Eli still is wonderful. But they haven't been in touch with him as often. I always share with them whatever text messages I get from Jim, and but he's great. He's great. He was. Man, I mean, he would bring great people into the production, and then we'd film in Chicago, and then we started filming a lot in Nashville, which was really fun going out there with him as well.
Talk about
been back to Nashville.
Music City. God, the kids must. I can't imagine just being thrown into that world with that talent at that young of an age. I'm sure they had an amazing time.
It was cool. You know, on the other show they would have celebrity guests too, and it was really funny. Is the biggest celebrity to come on their show was somebody they just didn't even know who he was because of their age, and that was Kevin Costner.
Well, going back to School Rock, you had Miranda Cosgrove on, I noticed. So that's a nice stick in the band.
That was the highlight. Yeah, Miranda was the highlight. By the way, Miranda might have been the sweetest young, and now she's an adult, sweetest young person I'd ever encountered, and was not affected by the garbage that everybody around her was exposed to. She was really, I was shocked. I'm still shocked because I think back on that. Just one of the kindest, sweetest young people, the way she was with Ariel, Zoe, and Eli. I'll tell you this quick story. I'll tell you this quick story.
We veered off again. Being a music oriented thing, we veered off into something now that we could probably go on forever. But yeah, go for it.
No, it's just an incredibly sweet young woman. So, anyways, yeah, go for it. Let's get back on the music and film.
No, I want to have you back on so I can hear all these music stories related to Steal the Show, and then Ariel and Zoe and Eli too. That's but over to the left shoulder here is my good buddy. I keep treating like this. He's but Michael Stanley, man, Heartland, and you mentioned Jim Peterik, of course, Heartland, just nice people. And your altruism coming through with the people in when you're filming What Tomorrow Brings. Do you want to give any shout outs to those two restaurants back in Michigan? We'll gladly give plugs here on all over the place.
Oh yeah, the two restaurants.
Oh hey, absolutely.
Yeah, Mark's Midtown, which is my favorite Coney Island. I've come down to Florida. I cannot find a Coney Island. They don't have them. Mark's Midtown, love them. And oh, what's the matter with me? Oh, the Dexter Pub in Dexter, Michigan. Great food, and their owner there, Peter, just a great guy. Yeah, he just two great places: Mark's Midtown in Ann Arbor and Dexter Pub. Real people, good people.
I'm back in Toledo from time to time, and let me tell you, folks, people from Michigan, they take their Coney dog seriously. So if Matt's giving a plug to Mark's Midtown, you know damn well I'm going to be there. But I once again want to thank Matt Engelbert from What Tomorrow Brings. Be sure to check that out. You can follow him on Instagram at What Tomorrow Brings Movie, and just check the festival circuit. Look for it. Look for it in streaming and distribution as the months progress. And Matt, welcome back here on All Over the Place anytime. Been an amazing show with you. Love the stories and to Jolie or JoJo or however you want to refer to her, congratulations on that Best Actress at the Santa Fe Film Festival. Love hearing that.
Thanks, guys. Eric and Jim, a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise. Same here. All right, folks, and you have been watching and or listening to All Over the Place on YouTube, on Spotify, your audio platform of choice. And don't forget to check out Harkins Theaters, Vinyl Record Dude, and DZ Presents, Danny Zalesko Presents. We'll be back real soon here on All Over the Place. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.